The cup of tea is a habit, but it can also be a ritual. When you get into the ritual of making a cup of tea, you realise what the Japanese were at hundreds of years ago when they used to have these big, complicated tea ceremonies. They were rituals. And rituals bring, they bring you into the present moment, because the movement in the ritual is almost forever. You can do it every day. It's the same thing. Imagine the ritual of the Japanese tea ceremony, or imagine a Buddhist ritual where you sit down at the same moment and your back is straight and you ring the meditation bell, and you've done it every day, every day. Imagine if you're in a Christian monastery and the bell goes in the middle of the night and you get up and you go down to the chapel and you stand there with everybody else and you recite the office of the church, the prayers, the psalms. Oh God, you are my God, for you I long. And you're saying the same prayers every day. Psalm 84, early in the morning, you get up, you go to the church, you say, come, ring out our joy to the Lord, hail the rock who saves us. And you've said that like, if you're an old monk and you were there for 30 years, imagine you've said it all that time. And imagine how deep you go. I do often think, to be honest, even of, just priests saying Mass, and there'd be nobody there in the church except maybe, 2 Our Ladies and the postman. Now, that's the way it used to be 50, 40 years ago. I don't know what it's like now. There'd be nobody there at all. But you're still doing a ritual. The priest is still there. Doing the rituals, the movements, lifting up the bread, the wine, doing, raising the chalice up at the consecration. It's that same physical ritual every day. And that's a very beautiful thing, because it brings the person deeper and deeper into the present moment, the eternal present. And making a cup of tea is the same. And there's loads of other things, ordinary things we do during the day. And it's really, really interesting to choose one or two of them, one at a time, and say this no longer will be a habit, it will be a ritual. And so when the 11 o'clock moment comes, you find yourself becoming more aware, more present, more conscious of actually what you're doing physically. It's almost like you're watching and observing your body move through space in a more intense way. And that's a ritual. But what it's doing is it's bringing you into this sense of consciousness in the present moment. The Orthodox people would say, the Orthodox Christians would say, it's like bringing the mind down into the heart. You're not caged. You're not caged in the mind or in. The mind tends to cage us in either the present or the past. We're so baggaged by the past, so burdened by the past, so wounded by the past that we're endlessly thinking of it. And we're also endlessly thinking of it as like what happened yesterday. And what effect it had. I'd be thinking of meeting Mario Rosenstock yesterday, in his studio in Dublin, and it gave me a great lift being with him. He's a very lively man. He does a podcast and he interviewed me, and it was really good. I enjoyed it. So then you're living with that past as if it's really present now. You're kind of floating around. What are you in good humour for? Oh, I had a great time yesterday with Mario Rosenstock. You're living in the past. It's yesterday. And the other one, of course, is living in the future, which is usually about anxiety. I mean, if you could have seen me last Tuesday, last Wednesday, because on Thursday I had an appointment with the MRI once again, that little tin can that you have to be shoved into like a sardine into a tin and channel your inner sardine for about 40 minutes with headphones on you and the noise of it and just the claustrophobia of it and trying to keep the body still for it and wondering I hope to God this MRI doesn't find anything too bad, They're scary moments. So that was on Thursday, but of course, needless to say, all day Wednesday, I'm living as if I'm already in the sardine tin. So I'm living in the future, I'm living in the past, and they're the ways that the mind seems to engage me, trap me, constrain me. When I let the mind fall down into the heart, that's the moment where I'm in the present. That is the present moment. Because then there is nothing to be anxious about. There's nothing to be afraid of in this moment. Nothing. And there's nothing to be over-exuberant about in the sense of your ego either. Because everything is what is. Whatever that is. It's being here. That's the way I felt this time last year. And I'm really, really ashamed that I didn't plant the tree. But the only lesson the tree has given me is that if you didn't plant it last year, and if it is still there, healthy enough because it survived the year in the little pot, it's a big pot, you could plant it this year. And last year I was really in a bad place because I was worried about my health. And now I'm in a good place because I think the health is improving. And this morning was one of those mornings where I got up. I was alive before I got out of the bed. That exuberance, that sense of energy that comes on you. This is a beautiful day. It's a winter day. It's November. It's wild rain outside. I'm here in Donegal, and it's windy and wet outside. And yet you walk around the house in the half dark at 7:30 and you think, God, it's a beautiful morning. And why is that? I think there must be this connection between physical health and melancholy. Because I know that for a good few years, I dreaded the winter, and I dreaded this time of year. And I used to wake in the morning with a kind of a blackness in me, a real blackness, which is impossible to explain unless you've had depression. Like a blackness, like a clotting of your whole body, that there's no point in getting out of bed. Everything seems empty, pointless. There's only bad news on the radio. The world is full of stress. It's a terrible feeling. And it's like a gravity multiplied by 10, pulling you down. And you go through sometimes a whole lot of questions about that as to, like, what's wrong with me? That was a question I used to ask myself an awful lot. What's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. And sometimes you give the answer, that it's a psychological thing, and you might be right. The value of going to a therapist is enormously important. But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it can be a physical thing. Sometimes it can be something simple about, and I'm not talking about acute depression, right? I'm not talking about really serious acute dark. I'm talking about the kind of melancholy that grips most of us and almost paralyzes us and makes us feel terribly lonely and terribly misunderstood and terribly kind of sad in ourselves. And sometimes that can be simple remedies of food, vitamin D, exercise, or going to the doctor because there's some underlying problem. I know that, for example, my mother, when she went into a bad period, when she had a downspin into black and bleak emotions, somebody would always say to me, there's probably something wrong with her. And you'd encourage her to go to the doctor. She was in her 80s at the time. And sure enough, you'd always find she had some kind of, maybe a kidney infection or something. Some small thing that you wouldn't notice. But it was putting her out of sorts. Because the connection and interconnectedness between body and emotion is ferociously tight. And so last year, because I had been in hospital and had an operation and my body wasn't healing, it made me sad. And the kind of, the columns I wrote at that time were columns about struggling to keep above the water and not drown in melancholy, to be honest. And the way I did it, the way I got through the winter last winter, was with rituals. Inventing small little rituals for myself, feeling that I don't feel comfortable sometimes in the wider community of a church because I kind of slipped off the institutional radar, But I found that it's possible within a private life to generate ritual and to do a meditative practice any time of the day. The most boring thing you do, the drudgery of cleaning your desk. I have to clean the desk because my desk gets very, very messy with sheets of paper and books and, wires for computers and just an endless amount of stuff. And so I endlessly have to clean the desk. And sometimes I do it in the morning, and it's a ritual. It's a habit, but when I become conscious of it, it becomes a ritual. And you would say that a ritual has to express. Like a ritual has to, in some way, it's like creating an intimacy between you and the universe. So that's where you start, bringing in your mentor deity, your Buddha or your Christ or whoever is the one that you pray to. And you say to yourself that, well, by this ritual, may Christ be more present to me. And it's kind of amazing that works. All them tea bags and all them mugs of tea sitting there in the corner looking out the window with your tea, and you've transformed it into an intimate meditation with Jesus. It's amazing. And then that sense of, Christ being present with you in that moment becomes itself a kind of a lens where everything, the rain pattering on the window, the wind blowing in the trees outside, everything becomes more real, you're just present. You're present with no judgment because you're present with Jesus. And you could do exactly the same with Buddha or with a mentor deity in whatever religious tradition that you feel called to. I say you feel called to. I don't say that you choose. Choosing different religions is choosing soup. It's making soup. A bland blend of mixed soup. It's no good. The only religion worth it is the religion you're called to. And the only thing in life that's worth doing is what you are called to do. And if you are in your life and never thought about this, never thought about the fact that you're called, well then through the process of small rituals you might realize the sense of the call. Because the universe is calling you. You were born. You were born. That's a unique thing. You didn't get born as three options. You got born as one single unique being with a unique DNA, with a unique face, a unique way of speaking, unique parents. Nobody had your view of the world but you. Nobody had the taste buds that you have. Everything about you is unique. The lovely psalm that says, every hair on your head I counted before you were born. Or the line in Rumi that I'm so fond of, may you have the face that you had before you were born. Some kind of uniqueness that's like so unique it has to be eternity itself. And that gets expressed in your birth, in your growing up. And here you are now, listening to this. Nobody else can do what you're doing. Nobody can move their lips like you can move them. Nobody can reach out your hand like you can move it out. Think of a dead person. They can't move their lips at all. So one of the things that deeply, deeply moved me was to stand at the open coffin of a close friend about 2 years ago who had died suddenly. My age. And there he was, a man of eloquence, beauty and grace. A silence in his ears that would be never again broken, never to hear another sound, never to speak another word, never to have the freedom to reach out to anybody, to embrace or to hug, even to make a cup of tea. You know the story about your man? There was a Lazarus who went to hell. This was now not the Lazarus in the Gospel, but in the Jewish writings there was a great story about a Lazarus. He went down to hell, and he was saying to God, "Oh, if only I could go back to tell my sons that they should live a good life because actions have consequences, and I had bad actions, and look at the consequences it brought me." Not even to give them a drop of water, not even could anybody put a drop of water on his tongue. That's the kind of finality you'll get when you start thinking about the uniqueness of your life. And it's not to use mythological or graphic stories to discombobulate yourself or disturb yourself with the darkness of hell or something. I mean, they don't talk about hell anymore. No, religions tend not to talk about hell anymore, but the strange thing is that we talk about hell more often in the real life. We talk about hell when we go on the telephone to the radio shows. We talk about hell to the therapist because people are living in hell. And when you read stories about people being abused and children being in fear and women being violently attacked and assaulted and murdered, you're talking about people living in hell. There's appalling hell. It's just that it's not in the afterlife anymore, it's in this life. And the same could be said for the realm of heaven. It's here, it's now. It's in this moment of love and compassion. Because your lips can move, your arms can reach out, your eyes can see. And when you make a ritual, you're using your senses, your eyes, your ears, sometimes your speech, because you can say a little prayer to your mentor deity. Whisper it, nobody looking. There's loads of them. I'm not going to... Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. That's a beautiful one. Orthodox Christians are saying that for 1,500 years. I would say most likely that prayer was being said as a mantra by Columkill. Imagine that. Lord Jesus Christ, ahirne Isa, Christ, Yisa, Yesu, Yesu, Isa, Yesu. That's from Greek to Irish is just a phonetic stretch. Yesu, Isa. Christ, same word, Christ, Greek, Irish. A hirna is a Christ. A hirna is a Christ. Jim Drucker. Have mercy on me. Make yourself a cup of tea now. Make yourself a cup of tea today. Do it as a ritual. That is to say, it's a habit, but you're going to make it conscious. You're going to become ever more conscious of putting in the tea bag first, making sure that the cup is scalded with boiling water even before that, and then hot cup, dry, tea bag at bottom, boiling water on top of that, and Bob's your uncle, but do it all in a very conscious way. Entering into the present moment as you're doing it. It's a ritual. And there's nothing complicated about it, and there's nothing complicated about meditating, there's nothing complicated about being enlightened, and there's no even work to be done. There's no work to be done on this. There's no work to be done about being a Christian or a Buddhist. There was a fellow asking the Dalai Lama one time, I really, really, really want to be a Buddhist. What, you tell me what I do. And the Dalai Lama said, just get up early in the morning. Then you're Buddhist. Just get up early in the morning, that's all. Getting up early can be a ritual. Putting on your clothes can be a ritual. I put on the same waistcoat every morning. It's a ritual. Or it's a habit. God, we get into our clothes in a very unconscious way, really, don't we? Men get into their clothes very unconsciously. I don't know why that is. It's not because they're warriors or, they're thinking less about themselves. It may be because they're thinking far more about themselves. There's so much going on in their head that they don't even know what their body is doing. Men. But all of us, men and women, we have bodies. And we have senses. We have, we have visual beauty. We can see, we can hear, we can touch, we can feel. And we can move. We can move our body. We can move our lips. Think about the way that you speak, right? Think about the way that's every time you say a positive thing, then people would make a ritual of that, the olden days there used to be, in fact, there still is in the house that I'm in at the minute, there's, at the front door, inside the front door, there's a tiny little font for holy water. Isn't that beautiful? There's no water in it. I'm afraid there's no water in it, and I don't use it or anything, but yet I can see the ritual of that. If I blessed myself going out of this house every time I went out of it, I would have a better energy walking down the road or driving down the road. No doubt about it. Doesn't matter. It's not to do with righteousness. It's not to do with morality. It's not to do with the institutions that embodied religion and then started to measure out what's good and what's bad for you and me and everybody else in that kind of hypocritical way. You want the best critique of all that stuff, read the Gospel, where your man, the wise Jesus is talking about painted sepulchres, calling the clerics of his time painted sepulchres. So, all I'm saying this morning is that the ritual is beautiful, to be in the present moment, and that the ritual can be some ordinary thing that you do. Some ordinary thing that you do. And make it a ritual. And don't be ashamed when you fail, because I'm telling you, I failed terribly. When I came this morning to read this, and I felt like this was a year ago, I was talking about how I wanted to leave out the lovely magnolia tree and plant it, and then I'd pass it every day, and it would it'd be my moment of blessing, just to walk past it. And to my shame, I wrote the column And I never actually did the deed to live up to my action. Isn't it such a good example of hypocrisy, by the way, isn't it? The way, we talk the talk, but we won't walk the walk. I talk the talk, but I wouldn't pot the plant. Oh, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm doing, says I. And I hadn't done it. And then I forgot about it and I didn't do it. Now, am I going to beat myself up about that? No, I'm using it to share with you how amazing it is to feel forgiven, to feel it's okay. But to say sorry is good, To say sorry is good. Even to confess this to you, funny enough, is actually good for me. Because you are real to me. I know people are there and they're listening, and I feel and some people who are very close to me and they're listening, and so I'm confessing it to you, and that's a really healthy thing to do. Oh, it's really healthy, to confess. It's so liberating. It's so liberating to confess your weaknesses. Firstly to yourself, I suppose, then to other people. I mean, when you've offended somebody and you say, I'm sorry. Such a liberation. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I was wrong about the tea. I used to insist when people would be making me tea, right? I used to insist on the cup being scalded. And if it wasn't scalded, the cup, with hot water before you put the tea bag in, if they didn't do that, if they just got a cold cup, I'd see the cold cup and I'd see the tea bag going into the cold cup, and then I'd see the boil of water going down on it, and I'd say, oh God, this is not going to be good tea. And then the tea would come with the milk in it. And of course, it just wouldn't be that hot. It would be warm, but it wouldn't have the kind of scald your tongue heat that I would expect from my particular choice in a cup of tea. Right? And very regularly, no matter where I was, I might be in a rehearsal room at the coffee break, tea break, or I might be at a meeting, whatever, I would simply insist on doing it again. I would take the mug of tea. I would go over and throw it out in the sink. And then I'd boil the water, and then I'd scald the cup. And then I'd put in the tea bag, same tea bag. And then I'd pour the boiling water on it. And then I'd be satisfied. And now I'm sorry I did that. I want to go back to all those people over 20 years and apologise to them and say, I'm sorry I made a big fuss of myself making me tea. As if that was the only tea you could be drinking. I'm sorry, I apologise. Because I think this is right. This is the right way to make tea. It doesn't actually mean it's the right way. It's the way I think it's the way is right. I want to make it that way. But can I not live beyond myself? Can I not live with you? And if you make the tea differently, can I not drink that tea too and feel so grateful that you're in my life in this moment, making me tea? Thank you. And I'm sorry for my arrogance. That's what I'd feel. Another place it used to happen was in the hotels, and I thought about it actually yesterday morning because, as I say, I had an MRI on Thursday, and then Thursday night I stayed in a hotel in Dublin, and then Friday morning I did the interview with Mario Rosenstock. So I was having breakfast in the hotel. It was the first time I was in a hotel since the COVID. And it was well spread out, and there was only a limited amount of people allowed into the breakfast dining room. So you had to book your slot. Did you want the breakfast at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock? I said 9 o'clock. I went down, having my breakfast, and just as I sit down at the table, something happened that always happens in hotels, in my experience, and that is the waitress with the coffee, or the waiter with the coffee, whoever it is, They come over as you're sitting down and say, would you like some coffee? And you say yes, and they pour out the coffee into a cold cup very often. Now, you haven't got your fry at this stage. You still have to go over and put the toast into the machine, which takes half an hour, or it feels like half an hour, and then you have to butter it. Then you have to get your marmalade, bring all that to the table. Then you go back over, get your plate, and then go through the buffet lids to see where the scrambled egg is and put 2 sausages with it. And by the time you've all that brought back to the table, the coffee is cold. And I don't like cold coffee. In the old days when I'd be out in a restaurant, or even just in a coffee shop, I would always say, I'll have an Americano, and then I should be going away, or he'd be going away, I would say, and could you make it extra hot? Now, there was some people told me that there's no such thing as an extra hot Americano. But I had this notion that a real good coffee maker person behind the bar knows how to scald the coffee cup before they put the Americano in, so that when it comes to your table, it's really warm, like it's hot. Like you couldn't trot a mouse in it or he'd burn his little toes. But again, I got so fixed on that being the right way to do it because it was my way of doing it. And I would propagate that. I wouldn't be embarrassed at a dinner table to give a lecture on it, like that's the truth. Like, you know, there is a God in heaven, 3 persons in the Holy Trinity or something. I'd be talking about the hot coffee. This is as if this is truth, and it's absolute truth, and I'm telling you. And that was an awful arrogant place to be, you know. Because then you realise as you get older, like, it's only my way of looking at coffee. Other people have other ways of looking at it. And now the coffee is so much better because I have come to realise that actually warm coffee is just as good as very hot coffee. Which means that you have no panic when you're at the breakfast table. You're not rushing the toast. You're not scrambling through the buffet to get your stuff because you're worried my coffee will be gone cold. No, it'll be warm. It's okay. There's nothing to worry about. We have our own ways of looking at the world, and we get obsessed that these are the right ways to look at the world. And the transformation happens when you see it from the other person's point of view, when you let go of all your opinions. And how do you do that? Ritual. Ritual. It's the biggest liberation that you ever experienced. Go to Mass. Go to your Buddhist center. Go for a walk at the same time. Do something precise. Even in the mundane habits of your ordinary life around the house. Cleaning your desk. Having an 11 o'clock break. Change the habit into a ritual. Move through the gestures with a consciousness that to be alive, to be able to use your senses, to move your lips, to move your fingers, that these are miracles of being, miracles of the here and now. Use them to make each gesture of dropping the tea bag into the cup, pouring the water on top of the tea bag every moment. Try and gather up as much complete total consciousness in every moment and every gesture that you can, and you'll realize this is a door. And then at the door, speak a little prayer. Invoke the Buddha. invoke Mary, invoke Jesus, whoever, Allah. And by bringing then the mentor deity into the ritual, by seeing the ritual as an engagement with the otherness, as an engagement with the other, an engagement with the mentor deity, as if the other presence is there, choosing you through the vehicle of the ritual, so that you begin to feel that it's not even you that controlled making the cup of tea or made the tea or sat with the tea, but in some sense the moment is the one in which you're being chosen. You're being drawn into something through the ritual. Something is inviting you in through this ritual, this mundane thing, to have a cup of tea, and yet doing it as a ritual. There's something inviting you into it. Some presence, some being, some deeper self. Maybe as a humanist you might think it's some really deeper, transcendent self. Okay? Doesn't matter what you name. Doesn't matter what you name the bird, really. It's just experience the song, experience the music of being here. And then that journey, ritual, mentor deity. Look around you and you'll find that you have a deeper sense of everything around you. Your mind has fallen down into the heart. And the heart knows no language, needs no language except silence. The heart is open. When that can't happen, and you feel depressed, and you feel lonely, and you feel sad, all I can say is, I have been there a few times, and I have found that physical health was sometimes underpinning my melancholy. And that happened really big time last year. And that's when I could see myself engaged in the little, if you like, prayerful ritual, the hope I'm going to use my Magnolia tree as a way of finding a ritual of blessing, and bang, I didn't. And this year I forgive myself. Can I read you one more before I go? I'd love to just read you one more. From the same period around last year. I was keeping indoors, waiting for the postman and tracking Trump on CNN. Do you remember Trump? November last year. I was keeping indoors, waiting for the postman and tracking Trump on CNN in between conversations with the cats. Together, we watched Trump every day. Charlie, the big black Tom, straddles my lap with such serenity that I wonder, might Trump not benefit from being reincarnated as a cat? Although the thought of a marmalade Trump replete with an orange tail and whiskers, exuding toxic emotions, while sitting on my lap, is a terrifying prospect, and I'd hate to imagine what Trump might do with a mouse. Not that Charlie, my black Tom, is tolerant of mice. He treats them with the same sadistic pleasure as any member of his species. And he's cantankerous at times, especially when his dinner is late, or if he's forced to wait outside the door too long in the mornings. But despite his long claws, huge fangs, and the gape of his mouth when he yawns, he's a great companion during the lockdowns. Outside my window, The trees lose more leaf every day. In the distance I see the neighbours' chimneys wheezing smoke. They too have been indoors for a while. They too have cats. They too wait. It's what we do. The old battered elders do best. In the year of COVID-19, in the year of November 2020, we waited and watched the leaves come and go, bloom and die, because we had no choice but to shelter indoors and let the Sitka woods grow tall. In the summer of 2020, I had spent the summer in West Donegal, where the ocean reflects light onto every headland and cliff. I had been there still if it wasn't for the cat. I couldn't bear to abandon the cat in Leitrim, and I don't think he'd survive in Donegal. Driving around Donegal for weeks, I didn't see a cat anywhere. I asked a man in Crawley one day, and he said there was plenty of cats, but that it was too windy for them to be outside, which sounded plausible. And since Donegal men are always outdoors, it only makes sense that the cats would remain indoors. But he said there might be another reason why Donegal cats stay close to the fire. Well, what's that? I wondered. Well, he said, young men drive so fast around here that any tabby with intelligence would never come out from under the chair of the kitchen. So you're saying it's either too windy or too dangerous for cats? I conjectured. Yes, he said, and there's a third possibility. Sometimes it's too noisy. Go on. Well, he said, Donegal men enjoyed the outdoor life so much that on a clear day the lawnmowers round the hillsides kick up a terrible ruction, like a swarm of bees in the wind, as they shave their lawns smooth as billiard tables. In fact, I had noticed the tight cut on grass from Bloody Foreland to Burtonport. And in one filling station I saw toy lawn mowers for sale. I mean, I've seen toy tractors and I've seen toy cars and I've even seen toy fire brigades. But toy lawn mowers was a new one on me. So the children are groomed into the joy of clean lawns from an early age, and outdoor cats would need headphones if they wanted to have a sleep on the porch or the doorstep. I'm always promising to do more in my own garden, but I never have the energy. Last week I wrote about the Magnolia plant in this column and promised to talk with it every day, but did I? No. Did I even nod at it? No. I spent the week watching Trump on CNN, and when I looked out the window, the tree was still in its pot, weeping. I went out and I said, "Oh, tree, what's your problem?" "You never talk to me," the tree said, "after you promising that you'd dig a hole and put me in the garden." "I'm sorry," I said. "Yeah, but you always say you're sorry," the tree cried. And in a way the tree was right. I'm a lazy couch potato. I'm full of good intentions, but I'm a wretched hypocrite. I don't even go to church on Sundays, and yet I'm never done talking about religion. I binge on wine and cheese, while I'm surfing videos of gurus and ascetics who live in various deserts. I live an imagined life. It's the same in the garden. I talk about loving trees, but I don't even sweep up the leaves or properly plant the magnolia tree. The strimmer sleeps with the lawnmower in the shed as the wilderness encroaches, as I hold the cat on my lap and doze on the couch, dreaming of cosy kitchens in Donegal. Well, I couldn't resist reading that as the conclusion of the previous one, if you know what I mean, about the Magnolia tree. But also because when I was writing there about the cats, you know, I do find the cats great help. They're like, to me, they're like gurus. You know, to me, I think that the cats are reincarnated lamas from Tibetan monasteries, and they came to help me, you know. Because when I look at them, I kind of sometimes see the nature of the animal is like the same as the nature of the human. We're animals too, and I learn from them. I learn from their mistakes, but I also learn from particularly the cat's ability to be in the present moment. The only thing is he doesn't have, or she doesn't have, the freedom of my imagination, the freedom to go back into the past or to construct futures imagined. They're in the present and in the cage of the present. We're in the past and the future and their cages, and we can't get into the present. There's a strange sense of kind of cosmic disintegration in the whole of the cosmos. It seems to me, and I'm thinking of Arvo Pärt, that great musician, he talks about this, but that there, whatever we're talking about in the kind of mythological, psychic event of Adam and Eve and the fall, Arvo Pärt says, it must have been a terrible catastrophe. There's some brokenness in us. And there's only one way to heal it. And that is to be chosen to accept the invitation and to fall into the present moment. And the door into that is the ritual. I really, really, really have enjoyed this. This has been special for me. And thank you for being here. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be continuing these November meditations next week. Bye-bye.